guys, welcome to Navigating Homeschooling. This is Leanna with part 3 of Homeschooling Inexpensively. Now, last week, well, actually it wasn't last week, it was 2 weeks ago, because last week I had a migraine, but so there was no video. But 2 weeks ago, I did Homeschooling Inexpensively, part 2, which was math and how I keep down the cost of math. And if you haven't seen that video, you can go back and watch it. Prior to that, I did kindergarten and preschoolers. But today, I'm just going to cover for the elementary age children, I'm going to cover homeschooling inexpensively in just 4 main subjects: history, world history and U.S. history, then Bible and science and grammar, and how I keep the cost down for teaching those subjects. And the reason I did math separately is because that's the one subject where my kids work at their own pace independently in completely separate books. With the other subjects, particularly history and science, I teach all my kids, all 3 of my kids that are currently elementary age, I teach them all from the same textbook, and then I give them activities appropriate for their age and abilities. And that not only keeps down the cost, it also saves me a lot of time. And so I'll just go into a little bit of how I do that. And I'm actually planning on making several videos of just how I teach an entire subject, like an entire lesson in, say, history. But that'll be a completely separate video later on, so I don't want to jump ahead of myself. So I'm just going to give just a basic overview on how I keep down the cost. Let's just go on first to world history. We're going to do that one first. That's one of my favorite subjects. And so regardless of which textbook you choose or which history book or whatever you like to choose for world history, what I would do is get one that is appropriate for a variety of ages, depending on the ages of your children. So like right now I have one that's in 1st grade, one that's in 4th grade, and one that's in 6th grade. Now what I like to use is I discovered, well, let me back up a little bit first. When I first started teaching world history with my first 2, when they were in the early elementary grades, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. I actually, for world history, I did unit studies. So I didn't even have a textbook, and you can totally teach history without a textbook. It just will require a lot more legwork on your part, but it's actually the very cheapest route. And what I did is I just picked a particular civilization. So we started out with ancient Egypt because that's one of my favorite time periods, and it also went well with what I was teaching in Bible because we were teaching in Genesis, which has the story of Joseph and Moses, and so Egypt plays a huge part. So I wanted them to get an understanding of ancient Egypt because it would help those Bible stories come alive. And so we did basically like a unit study on ancient Egypt, and I got books from the library, which of course are free, and I got resources online. It's amazing what you can find for free online, on blogs, and just, you can Google ancient Egypt lap books and find some. And I just searched through and found materials I liked and picked and choose out of various different materials. I got a lot of stuff simply for free, and I didn't always use everything I found, but so that's how I taught history with my first 2 in the very beginning. Is we did ancient Egypt, and we did ancient Roman history. And the reason I picked those 2 first is I already told you, for ancient Egypt because we were going through Genesis. Then when we went through the life of Christ, I wanted them to have an understanding of the Roman Empire. And I didn't really worry about doing it in civilizations in any particular order, because at those really early ages, they don't really fully understand a timeline at that point. And so anything that happened prior to cars and planes, in my kids' mind, was a long time ago. It didn't matter if it was 100 years ago or 2,000 years ago. It was just a long time ago to them. In fact, my daughter used to call it back in those days. She would say, oh, is this from back in those days? And so we kind of jumped around. We did ancient Egypt, then we did Rome, then we did, I think we did medieval ages. And so, but then I discovered the story of the world last year, and I'm really, really enjoying that. And so I'm going to show you that book and why I like it. You can get, now there's a lot of materials you can get. I'm going to show you the ones I think you absolutely need. I don't think you necessarily need to get all of them because that will rack up the cost pretty quickly. So the things I use is the paperback book, which is about $18. It's actually on sale right now for about $15. And so I use the paperback book, and then I use the Story of the World Volume 1, Ancient Times Student Pages. Now they also have an activity book, but it's a lot more, but these student pages, you can get a PDF for $6.36 right now. And I love that because it's so low cost, and I can reuse it for each child. Now I don't always use every page in here, but it has, let's go to maps, it has coloring pages, it'll have word searches, crossword puzzles, just all kinds of activities. And so one's for appropriate for, you can give the younger kids a coloring page and have the older child do some map work. And then I would have, I might give older child a writing assignment. But anyway, so that's what I like to use. And so let me show you the book. Now, the Story of the World is actually made up of 4 volumes, and this is just the first one right here. And like I said, you can get that in paperback for somewhere between $15 and $18. This is a paperback. It's kind of beat up. I was using it all last year, and so we got through about halfway through, and then we're going to finish the other half this year. And so this is my 3-year-old. She does this. Well, I may have spilled the coffee, but she did the coloring. Okay, so what I like about it is it reads like a story, which is what history is. So when you read it, you just read it to your kids as if you were reading a story. My kids like to sit on the couch while I read it. And it comes in pretty short sections. You can see where it stops. So we may only read one section. If it's a very short section, we might read 2 sections, and then we'll go and do an activity page or perhaps some other project that I have for them. Now, we didn't spend a lot of time in Egypt. We kind of just read through those pages because we had already done, like I said, a unit study on that. And then, so we actually focused on ancient China, which is in here somewhere, and focused on that, spent a little more time on China with extra activities for ancient China. And so, but it covers all the history of in chronological order, which is another reason why I like it. So it'll skip around through various different nations. But if there's one I want to focus on, like I said, last year we focused on China and spent a little more time on that than some of the other nations. And then this year, this year we're going to focus on ancient Greece. And it'll end in Roman history, but again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on there because we've already done that. But we're going to focus mainly on ancient Greece. And again, I'll just get online. You can do all kinds of things. You can incorporate art with it. You can incorporate, give them a writing assignment for the older kids. One fun activity we did at the beginning of last year, we went to our local international store, and me and the kids, and we walked through the store, and we picked out foods from various different nations and regions of the world, and we did a worldwide dinner. And so we had a dinner that evening with foods from all over the world, and we had I set up place cards saying what the food was and what country or region it was from, And we tried something, I got some things I knew the kids would like, and then we tried some new stuff that they may or may not like. But that was a lot of fun from the kids, and that was a huge success. Now, again, I'm going to do later a more in-depth video of how I would teach a history lesson using Story of the World. So I don't want to jump ahead of myself. I would give, say, my son who's in first grade, you know, I'm going to give him very basic assignments. I'm going to give him coloring sheets, maybe do a very simple lap book with him. And then for my older kids, who's in fourth and sixth, they're gonna do, you know, they're gonna have more, you know, writing assignments. I might give them like an assignment. Sometimes I give them like they can retell an ancient myth, or they could write about a particular historical person. Another fun thing is my kids really like Minecraft, so you know, I might have them build in Minecraft one of the 7 wonders of the world. So if you're like doing, say, Babylonian history, you can have them recreate the Hanging Gardens in Minecraft. And so that could be something to reinforce that time period in their mind, and in a way that's fun for them. And so those are just some different ideas there. Libraries, that is a great resource. Usually I don't just depend on the Story of the World. I will also get tons of books from libraries. Just like when I was doing the unit studies, I'll go to the library and pretty much check out nearly every book in the kids section on whatever particular topic that we're on. And basically for US history, I do essentially the same thing. So for American history, for US history, I really like Angela Odell's books, America's Story. And I was actually given the first book and really liked it, so I went ahead and purchased the next one. There's actually a total of 3. We're on the 3rd one now. And we've gone through these books, so basically we take 2 years to go through one book. So if you start your child on the first book in first grade and take 2 years to go through it, you can do first and second, the second book, third and fourth, and then the final book, 5th and 6th. And that's basically what I did with my son. And then as my other children came along, you know, my daughter came along, she's basically 2 years behind my son. I just, wherever we are in American history, I just put her in that spot. And that's fine, because when we get to the end of the 3rd book, I can just go back to the 1st book. It just means it's slightly out of order for her. Although when he was doing the early American history, even though she was, I think when he started, she would have only been preschool age. But she likes to do whatever her brother does, so she kind of got a little bit of it. I don't know how much she retained, but she got a little bit of the early American history, even though I wasn't officially teaching her yet. And so, and that's the great thing I like about teaching this way, is you can always jump the little kids in whenever it's appropriate. First, I want to show you America's Story so you can see what it looks like. And again, you could do this with, if you don't prefer American Story, you have a different history book, you can do the same thing, and you don't need to be buying a history book for every single grade. Okay, so these are the American Story books. Now you can see here I have different editions. This is and I wouldn't buy all 3 of these at once. If you were just starting out, I would buy one. That way, if you decide you don't like it, you're not spending money on all 3 of these, because like I said, these are about $30 each. But this is going to be for all your kids through entire elementary. So again, I started, you know, you can do 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and there you've covered, giving them a nice groundwork for U.S. history before they go into the higher grades and do a more in-depth study. So this first book, this is what I started my kids on. Again, it just reads like a story. It has illustrations, and they'll have narration breaks. Now, there's other material you can purchase with these. I didn't purchase those. I just, again, do the same thing I do with world history. I get library books. I find there are so many lap books for American history you can find online. I even have a few games I created for early American history on my website. I have a colonial game. I have a game for the American Revolution. I just created one for World War One. I haven't actually put it up yet, but it'll be up there soon. So, we read through these, and then again, I might have them. In fact, I think I found a map online and basically had them recreate this map when we got to this portion. Mm-hmm. So I give them different activities like that to do to go along with it. When we got here to some of the Western history, I found some free materials for the Pony Express. I found a free game for the Oregon Trail that I downloaded. It just takes a little bit of legwork, but you can get a lot of neat stuff like that. And let's see here. And then, like I said, this is where we are now, and we haven't got real far yet. So we're just about, we covered the story of the Wright brothers, and we're just about to move into history of World War One. As you can see, this one is their latest edition is a little bit nicer, more professional looking, but it's the same thing that you read. It reads very much like a story, but it has the basic facts there as well. Now, real quick, for Bible, I don't actually use any type of curriculum for Bible. I just use the Bible. But I like, if you want a supplement to go with it, I like Veredus Press has a CD, and they have it for various different portions of the Bible. So like right now we're going through, well, last year we did the Judges of Israel, and this year we're going through the Kings of Israel, and they have for $29 Judges to Kings Teacher's Manual. Basically what it is it has, let me pull it up here. So you can click on whatever section you happen to be in. Here's a genealogy of David. Let's see, we are currently at Saul, the first king of Israel. So it has questions, so you can have the kids read some scripture on their own if they're old enough to read. Then for my younger son, I have the older kids read some scripture on their own in the morning, and then I will teach the lesson from the Bible to all my kids, including my younger son who doesn't read well yet. And then I'll have the older kids answer these questions, and I have them do it in cursive, just get a little bit of cursive practice in. They hate me for that. And then for my younger son, I have him, he has a little composition book that he, colors a picture for whatever story that we're on. So my first grader, I get one of these books right here, or you can get them at Walmart. And I like them because they can write here and draw a picture here. And so I basically kind of made my own trace words for him here, and that he could trace over Israel wants a king. He can read a little bit, so I just got him some writing practice in, and then he draws his picture for it. So here is Saul hidden the stuff, and depending on what mood he's in that day, he may or may not decide to color his picture. And so that's as far as we've gotten. And then just for variation, again, I utilized Minecraft sometimes. Last year I had them reconstruct the tabernacle in Minecraft, and I had them build it in Minecraft to the actual dimensions of what the tabernacle was. And that was a lot of, they seem to really enjoy that activity. Now for science, I pretty much teach science the same way as I do history. Again, I don't buy multiple science books. I buy, for elementary, I actually only use one science book. I use, it's called Considering God's Creation. And I started this with my son when he was in first grade. And again, as each child gets older, when my daughter started first grade, she jumped into wherever we were at. And then now my youngest son, he jumps in. And it really doesn't matter what order you do it in. So I'll show you the book I used. And again, it doesn't matter. You don't have to use this one. If you want to use a different one, just find a science book for an affordable price that that is suitable for multiple ages through elementary, and then just gear each activity for the abilities and age of that child. So, but I like Considering God's Creation, and you can get it online for, you can see here for, let me get the right price here, about $30. It's this one right here. The teacher's manual and the digital notebook for $29.95, and it's PDF now. Now I don't have the PDF version, so I've used this book with my son from 1st grade through 6th grade as a nice foundation for science. And so I'll show you how this works. And see, with him, I just started at, it starts out with the universe, so basically astronomy, then goes on to Earth, rocks and minerals, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, weather, I skipped weather, human anatomy over here. Now, but you can skip around. Like we did 2 years ago, we did the plant kingdom, and I didn't feel like going into the animal kingdom at the time. At that time, I saw some neat ideas for human anatomy, so we just skipped the animal kingdom, and we went over here and went ahead and did human anatomy. And so this year, we're actually going to go back and do the animal kingdom. That will actually complete this book for my oldest child. And so then for the younger children who may have missed the first lessons, when we get to the end, we just go back and start wherever, to the lessons that she didn't get to do. And so, and then for my youngest son now, he's in 1st grade. So currently we're on the animal kingdom. So my 1st grader, he's going to be starting here. You can take this one book, a $30 book, and that's all I've used for science. Now, I use supplemental materials with it. Now, real quick before I talk about that, here are, again, this is PDF now, but here are the pages that come with it. And so let me show you how, real quick. So, like when we were doing astronomy, this is the one lesson right here, getting to know the planets. It's lesson 4. We actually spend a day per planet. So it took us, lesson 4, we did that in 8 days, 9 days. Pluto's not a planet anymore. This book is not updated. This one's a little bit older, so Pluto's been degraded since then. But we went ahead and talked about Pluto and why it isn't considered a planet any longer. So then the pages over here, you have, you can build, you put the planets right here. They color them. These can be made into a mobile, or you can glue planets right here. Actually, the mobile looks like right there. Then I really like this page. For each planet, we did one of these pages. And so the distance from the sun, size, distinctives of that particular planet. And so we made a page for every single planet. So you don't have to do, my point is, you don't have to do a whole lesson in one day. You can take as long as you want. And like I said, it's taken us 6 years to go through this book. But you really need to have some supplemental materials because, there's some vocabulary, there's a lesson you can read, it has Bible reading suggestions, it has activity suggestions at the end. But again, I get a lot of supplemental materials online. Experiments. Pinterest is a great place to find, ideas for science experiments. When we were studying weather, I Googled, science experiments for the weather. We made a tornado in a bottle. So you can have a lot of fun with this curriculum if you're willing to do just a little work and find other activities, because I think for science, you really, it shouldn't all, books are great, And again, I get a lot of library books for science, but it's fun to have some actual hands-on activity. If you're when we were studying the plant kingdom, we went out and we studied, desert plants, and we live in a desert, so we went out and I had the kids, we took a walk and had them draw pictures of certain plants, try to, if we discovered a plant we didn't know what it was, we would take pictures and go back and try to figure out what it was. You can do the same thing when you're doing the animal kingdom. We also live near a mountain, so we could go up to the mountain and get a different climate there, and have the kids draw pictures or take photographs. My kids have a tablet, so my daughter wanted to take photographs when we went up to the mountains. And so those are just some ideas you can do. And so I'm spending on, I have 4 kids, and my youngest, she's only 3 right now, but I'm using this for one thing right here for $30 for 4 children for the entire elementary from 1st through 6th grade. It's not only cost effective, but it's also very simple because I'm not having to teach multiple science lessons to multiple children. I simply teach one lesson and give each child an activity that's appropriate for their age. Okay, and now the last subject I want to touch on is grammar. Grammar is a little more difficult in that, like math, you really have to work with each child at their own pace. You can't just do like history and science and teach one lesson and give different age-appropriate activities. But I don't buy a textbook for grammar for the first 3 grades, for 1st, 2nd, and even 3rd grade. I didn't use a textbook. Now, I had a 3rd grade textbook that was given to me. I barely used it. And the reason for that is really in those grades, that grammar, those early grammar, it's stuff I know, and it's things like a noun, a verb, a subject, a predicate, adjectives, adverbs, and I think by 3rd grade we touched on prepositions and prepositional phrases. But for 1st and 2nd grade, I primarily teach them grammar through games. Now, a lot of grammar kids will kind of, just like language in general, your kids absorb, they understand language organically, in that, you don't have to have a curriculum for your child to learn to speak. They hear you speak and they learn to speak correctly, and you even use the correct verb tenses from simply them hearing you and them talking, and they might use the wrong tense, and then what do? As a parent, you say, you correct them. It's not do's, it's does. In a lot of that early grammar, they actually kind of know it already by 1st and 2nd grade. They just don't know that they know it. And so, because by that point, usually by the time they're in 1st grade, they can usually speak a sentence with, for the most part, it's grammatically correct when they speak. And so all you're really doing in that age is I'm just teaching them the parts of speech and helping them to break it down in their mind. And so I do it a lot through games. And so like here on my site, I have a adjective game. Once I teach them nouns and verbs first. And those are pretty easy to teach because nouns, those are just person, place, and thing. Unless you're talking about abstract nouns, which I don't usually get into abstract nouns until 2nd grade. But for 1st grade, I just stick with the person, place, and thing. And I say, okay, then I show them nouns around the house. And we learn what a noun is. And once we learn what a noun is, then we can learn what an adjective is. And the adjective game is a fun little game that I've created. It's free. You can go download it for free. And you're just matching things that can describe that particular noun that you've pulled up on the card, and the child can play it by themselves, or they can play it competitively with another child. And whatever child has the most descriptions that can fit that noun wins that round. I teach verbs, just showing them it's an action. And we don't get in 1st grade, we don't get into helping verbs yet or being verbs. I think I teach a little bit of that in 2nd grade and reinforce it in 3rd grade. But in 1st grade, we just focus on the verbs that are actually action verbs. And again, the kids can act out the action. And then I also have, once they've learned the various parts of sentence, I have this build a sentence game. Again, this is a free download. You can download it for free on my website. And they just organize these stacks of words into the correct piles, whether it's an adjective, a noun, a verb, an adverb, or a preposition. And then they can take those and use them to build their sentence. Now, of course, they'll need to know that a subject is a noun and that the predicate is going to be a verb. We're talking about the simple subject and the simple predicate. And then put all those other, put their prepositions into place. And they can build silly sentences. I mean, they can just have a lot of fun with it. In third grade, I'll get a lot of free worksheets online. Again, there's a lot of free websites. I'll go into those next week that I will print up a worksheet just to see, okay, do they understand what we've been learning? Can they actually put it on paper? Now that my children are older, I've been trying to find a grammar program that I like. I decided to try out this year Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind. They actually have an elementary grammar. This is the same lady who makes Story of the World, and but I went directly to the intermediate grammar because I looked at the first few pages there, and there was all those first early pages are stuff my daughter, who's in 4th grade, and my son, who's in 6th grade, they already know. And so I felt like that they could jump right into the intermediate grammar. And it's PDF, and so I really like that about it, that it's PDF. And so I can reuse it with each child. And it's very, very reasonably priced. And so far, my kids seem to be doing really well in it. And it's very understandable. And then for writing, again, also by Susan Wise, is this Writing with Skill Level 1. Again, this is intermediate. There are some elementary age books, but I went directly to the Writing with Skill Level 1. Now this book, I feel like a 7th or 8th grader could do this book on their own. My son, who's in 6th grade, he probably can read the lessons and do these activities on his own, with maybe, occasionally coming to me for help or explanation. But I decided to do it together with him and with my daughter and read the lessons to them. My daughter's in 4th grade. It's a little bit advanced for her, but in some ways, my son and my daughter are kind of on the same level when it comes to writing, because my daughter loves to write. She's been writing novels since she was 8 years old, and she's 9, almost 10 now. So she loves to write. And so her writing is probably better than my son, who's in 6th grade. Now my son reads a lot better because he reads more than her. He loves to read. He's just not a fan of writing. And so he's the better reader, but she's the better writer. So I felt like, in a way, they're almost on the same level. So I put them both in this book, and I read the lessons out loud to them and kind of do it along with them. And so far, they've been doing well in it. And I'm just going to see how it goes. I mean, it may come to the point where my daughter may have to move at a slower pace than my son. It may come to a point where it becomes too difficult for them, and we might have to wait another year or two. But that's the great thing about buying PDF, because I only print as I need. And since I only print as I need, then if we want to, stop and say, hey, this is getting a little too hard, we can pull back and then next year start again at the very beginning and refresh our minds. Or always print a review section to remind them of the skills that they've learned before going on. So that's another thing why I like PDF. And again, it's very reasonably priced here, about $20. Again, I haven't used these for very long. I've only really just started these 2 books, but so far I'm liking them. But again, for writing and grammar prior to this, I've just had them write. They read a lot. I've had them write for various other subjects like science and history. And if you feel like these ones are too hard, or you want to start your kids on workbook that earlier than this, they do have elementary ones. And since I like these, I would probably like those. So I might consider getting the elementary ones for my younger son, maybe by third grade. I probably wouldn't do it in first or second, but maybe third grade I might consider getting one of the elementary books. Again, I like it that it's PDF because when you have 4 kids, I don't want to keep buying workbooks over and over again. So if this video has been a help to you, give it a like and stay tuned for next week. It'll be the final part of Homeschooling Inexpensively, and I'm just going to take you through some of my favorite websites for supplemental material for history, science, math, grammar, whatever. And I spend a lot of time doing Google searches, and I'll just save you the legwork and the trouble of going through slow pages and pages that don't load and pages with viruses, and that's never fun. So there are some really great websites though out there that I love to use and would love to share with you. So I will see you then.